Class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Let's start off with the big Turning Points USA Student Action Summit, the SAS. Let's just call it the American Nazi Youth Conference for short. This is where all of the insaniacs the Republican Party got together for their little hate fest. Very interesting weekend. Very interesting little song and dance by all of the usual suspects. Lauren Boebert had her WWE moment. Flashing lights, flames. I got to tell you, no one puts on a hate fest quite like our friends in the GOP. Very, very well funded, well choreographed, lots of hate. And I look at Matt Gaetz, who allegedly, I'm going to throw the alleged. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he is innocent until proven guilty. But lots of allegations about his, paying underage girls for sex and cross borders kind of stuff and drug this and that. Lots of stuff. Audacity to stand up and point his finger at the people protesting to want to maintain their rights to do with their body what they choose. He called them odious and ugly and said that the women who are against abortion or the ones who want abortions are ones that, how did he put it exactly, are the ones no one would want to impregnate because they look like a thumb, according to him. Now, this is a little midget of a guy who's spouting off about people with a giant forehead. Looks like one of either Beavis or Butthead, but he's going to talk about other people. He went on to say these are odious people inside and out. They're like 5'2", 350. He talks about they should go on marches. And I'm going, this is a guy who someone needs to. Where's Will Smith when you need him? But this was kind of the whole weekend there at the Nazi Hate Fest, where you had Marjorie Three Names, Taylor Greene, giving a little side spew, talking about how this is a Christian nationalist country. She forgot the white part, but you knew what she meant because there were a lot of white people there. It was a very white ordeal. She said, we need to be the party of nationalism. I'm a Christian, and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists. Yeah. And again, she believes that the rest of us, the entire country, that she represents everyone, that she represents the majority. And this is where the silent majority of people who put up with and tolerate these religious zealots, these extremists, these people who for years we've tolerated. And I'm guilty of it as well. I've told stories of, being in a restaurant and having somebody in the most obnoxious of ways have their performative prayer in front of everybody for everyone to see. And just going, do we need that? Is that really what was called for? And no, what it is it's imposing their beliefs and their faith and their will upon everyone else. And this is basically what these folks want. And as I've always said, this is where the fun is going to be. And I've said this for years. Where the fun is going to be is once we've officially staked the flag in the ground, that we are a Christian nation. None of those other ones. None of those others. That's when the fun's going to start. That's when they're going to start eating each other because you're not pure enough. And we're seeing this. We saw this at the Hate Fest. The purity, the absolute inline. And Trump's a big part of this. If you're not absolutely, totally pure, you're out. For instance, the guy who's the head of Gab, a Doug Mastriano supporter and advisor or whatever he is. I guess Mastriano gave him money. For those who don't know, Doug Mastriano, I believe, is a Nazi. He is running for governor in the state of Pennsylvania as a Republican. Has the most extreme agenda possible. Would take us back, to the Stone Age. But that's an argument for another day. Their agenda, so insane. This guy said that, he doesn't want the Jewish commentators who are in their corner, who are solidly behind, doesn't want them until they repent and become, well, crazy like them. This, again, is where we're heading, folks. And look, you may agree with them on certain policies. You may be in this camp, but you're not pure. You're never going to be pure. You're never going to fit the bill. You're not. And eventually, when they've used you up, they're going to discard you. They're going to throw you under the bus. And this is interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, the Hate Fest went on. It was a weekend-long shindig. Some rich people paid for it, as they always do. And they're always good for some hilarity. For instance, as I said, Lauren Boebert came in on her big WWE moment with the flames and the music and all kinds of stimulus and lights a flashing. It was entertaining. I give her credit. Entertaining. Give the people who put it on. They put on a good show. She had a comment that contrary to popular belief, she said, I have never been an escort for a Senator Ted Cruz, but I will tell you tonight, she said, it's the coolest thing I've heard about Ted Cruz. So I heard her that clip and I played it, a couple of times over and over. And, she says, I've never been an escort for a Senator Ted Cruz. In my mind, what is, these are very specific words she's chosen. Is it she meant to say, I've never been an escort for a senator? And then go, oh, gee, there was that one time. I better qualify this and say for Ted Cruz. Maybe. But she goes on to say, well, the coolest thing, is, that's the coolest thing I've heard about Ted Cruz. And the thing is Ted Cruz is so uncool that paying a prostitute could, quite frankly, be the coolest thing about him. I don't know. Now, look, I'm not shaming, people who work in the sex trade. That's your thing. God bless you. I wish you the best. I think it should be legal. I think it should be safe. I think all of that. But interesting from our hypocrisy crowd, because obviously these are the people who are the ones who preach to us about how we should live our lives, telling us that evidently this is the coolest thing. Coolest thing. Yeah. Gun fetish Barbie. But I got to tell you, I think the funniest thing and the most bizarre thing and the scariest thing and the most unsurprising thing was Donald Trump, who was there because anytime there's a crowd of crazy people, he's got to give his long-winded, boring, wandering, meandering spiel. His hit piece was, I quote, as president, I wanted to give myself the Congressional Medal of Honor, but they wouldn't let me do it. They wouldn't let me do it. I said, I'm going to give it to myself. I'm going to give myself the Congressional Medal of Honor. I've always wanted that. They said it would be inappropriate. I think there have only been like 300 Congressional Medals of Honor ever handed out. I mean, we're talking... One, I think you have to be in the military or have been in the military. I think that's a key component of it. You got to, and you've got to have done something kind of heroic. Just kind of throwing that out there. This is a big freaking deal. And just to willy-nilly go, I've always wanted one. They look pretty cool. They go nice with orange. Could fit with my red tie. The fact that he would say that out loud shows just what he thinks of all the little Nazis who aren't really paying attention to what he's saying. They just, oh my gosh, there's our cult leader. He also went on to another little bit of insight into his head. He told all of the little Nazis in the crowd that he kind of liked it when the Taliban leader called him Your Excellence. I just, and I'm still struggling with, he could even be swayed by the Taliban, who just would talk nice to him, would praise him, And the right will go after Joe Biden for getting our people the hell out of there. I mean, it's kind of a weird world. Now, the interesting thing is these people are telling you exactly who they are. You've got the Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, hey, you know, we're a Christian nationalist country. We don't care about any other religions. You got Bimbo Barbie over there going, hey, I wasn't an escort for Ted Cruz. But it was a cool thing if he was buying people and doing that. You got Trump going, you know, wanting to steal valor. And then you've got J.D. Vance, who wants to be a senator from Ohio, going, you know, we should force people to stay in unhappy marriages. You know, because, you know, for the kids' sake, you know, even if they're violent, even if the husband's, you know, beating the wife, they should stay. Because remember, Ohio is a rape state. Ohio is a marital rape state. Perfectly legal. No. Yes. If you're married, no such thing. Look it up. But Vance went on to say that one of the greatest tricks, I think, of the sexual revolution pulled on American populace, which is the idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, you know, they were maybe violent, but they certainly were unhappy. And so get rid of them and make it easier for people to shift spouses, like changing their underwear. They're going to make people happier in the long term. And he adds, and maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages. Now, we don't know that. I personally think if you're unhappy and you're married and you're fighting all the time, that ain't good for the kids. It's better if you're gone. End that. Find somebody that's going to make you happy, lead something of a functional life. But this is the worldview. Keep those women in their place. Make their worth their uterus. All they're good for is pumping out little units and baking pie. And control. Can't go anywhere, can't do anything. No more credit cards for you women, no jobs for you. This is the future. And look, they're not ashamed of saying it. Listen to what they are saying. It's scary, scary stuff. And look, the sad reality is their hypocrisy never comes with a price tag. As I've been saying, this stuff won't affect them. It's only you and me, the working people. For instance, and I give you a for instance, Glenn Thompson, Republican representative from the state of Pennsylvania. Glenn Thompson evidently went to his gay son's wedding over the weekend. They were married in a same-sex wedding. That's right. The congressman and his wife both attended their son's wedding. And the spokesperson for the congressman said the congressman and Mrs. Thompson were thrilled to attend and celebrate their son's marriage on Friday night as he began this new chapter in his life. They were very happy, very happy. And you go, very happy, but you just voted against. You voted against the Respect Marriage Act. You just voted against the same-sex marriage act. You just voted against this, Glenn. How can you then be thrilled? How can you then go, oh, that's okay? How can you do that? Well, the reality is it's not going to affect you. It's the same thing on the abortion front. They're pushing all of this stuff going, it's not going to affect my family because we're going to have the resources to be able to take our kids where we want to. We're going to be able to do what we want. It's scary. It's frightening. And I'm telling you, these people are dangerous. Republicans hate working people. It's that simple. But we got lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. Where working people come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible, 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's been 13 years. 13 years ago yesterday was the last time we raised the minimum wage in this country. And there is virtually nowhere in the United States where you can afford to rent an apartment in this country living on minimum wage. And look, they know that. You want to talk about wage theft? Happens every day as we cheat people out of a respectable living. It's the old, hey, if I could pay you less, I would. And, you know, if you remember, you go back to a number of years ago when Ron Paul was running for president saying, we're against the minimum wage. You know, if people are willing to work for $1 an hour, that's what it should be. Remember, every Republican voted against minimum wage, and a number of Democrats are against it as well. There are no Republicans who are supporting a reasonable minimum wage increase. Again, I go back to my basic premise. Republicans hate working people. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got Kurt on line one. Kurt, how are we doing today?
Well, Rick, how are you tonight?
Living the dream, my brother.
Well, just remember this about the minimum wage. Remember what Harry Truman said in 1948 about the Republicans and minimum wage?
What was that?
They're for a minimum wage. The more minimumer, the better.
I forgot all about that. That's a good one.
Yeah, and that was when he actually took the Republican Party platform of 1948 and said, the Republican Party says that they're for this, and I'm going to read you what they say they're for, but this is what they're not doing anything about it. And he was talking about the health care, the housing, public education, Social Security. Oh, by the way, remember they wanted to extend Social Security in those days, but they took 750,000 Americans off Social Security in order to save it.
Yeah, it's that old, we have to kill it in order to save it mentality. Yep.
Exactly. But the reason I called, and I had your screener, I think she peed her pants when I was talking to her because she was laughing so hard.
I hope not. I got to clean that mess up then.
But Donald Trump wanting a Congressional Medal of Honor, and like I told your screener, I said, Audie Murphy can get a Congressional Medal of Honor. Forrest Gump fictitiously got a Congressional Medal of Honor, if you remember. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't James Stockdale and Bob Kerrey also get Congressional Medals of Honor?
I'm not sure about Kerry. I thought Stockdale did.
I'm thinking Kerry did too. Bob Kerrey, not John Kerry, but right. Bob Kerrey of Nebraska. And like I told your screener too, I said maybe Trump was confusing the Congressional Medal of Honor with the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
No, I truly believe he wanted to view himself as a hero, a war hero. You know, he wanted to. He knows what those medals are. That's one of those.
Well, you also remember, but you got to remember too. In 2016, when he was running, didn't a veteran give him a fake Purple Heart? And he said, "I always wanted one of these."
Yep.
So you know, and then J.D. Vance. Oh my gosh, I swear, I'm definitely voting for my Congressman Tim Ryan for the U.S. Senate. Let me tell you.
As I hope everyone in Ohio does. Tim Ryan's a good guy.
Exactly.
He's a good working class guy from Youngstown. Good family background. I think would be fabulous in the Senate. Someone like J.D. Vance and the craziness that's come out of his mouth. Please, Ohio, my former state, find your sanity.
Well, get this, Rick. The guy is in Israel campaigning right now.
Oh, he's trying to make some money. He's trying to pay off his debts because he's kind of in hock, I guess, right now, isn't he?
I thought he was a billionaire that Donald Trump was supporting.
Vance?
I thought he was a Silicon Valley billionaire.
No, not Vance.
I thought he was a Silicon Valley billionaire.
No, he wrote that stupid book, Hillbilly Elegy.
And I never read the book. But I will be reading the one that guy that you had last week wrote about the colleges.
That would be a good book.
The one about the falling down of the Ivory Tower. But I mean, when did the state of Israel become part of the state of Ohio? Is what I want to know. Well,
there's some interesting things going on in the backgrounds around that, which is there's some weird stuff going on around crushing the progressive movement in this country, and it's I'm not knocking the Israelis, and I'm not knocking. No, it's not knocking Israel, but it's trying to figure out how to quell the Democratic parties, getting the people uprising and saying, hey, we deserve better wages, hours, conditions. We deserve, better opportunities for our kids, our seniors, we do, our workers, all of that stuff.
And, this is funny. I started working in Medicaid 20 and a half years ago, January 14th, 2002. I started working in Medicaid. And I was making maybe $9.17 an hour back in 2002. And this is with a private company, not the state of Ohio. And I was living in the city of Fair Lawn, which was a suburb of Akron. And I had a one-bedroom apartment, a living room, a bathroom, kitchen, all that stuff. I would venture to say it was less than 800 square feet. I was paying $535 a month for that apartment, living by myself. I'm living in a house now where I'm paying pretty much less for my mortgage than I did for that rent 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is, I thought, I want to just look and see what that same apartment goes for today. That apartment, same layout, I don't know if it's the same unit, but the same layout, $945 a month.
And the minimum wage hasn't gone up a dime since then. Yeah, it's crazy.
I think it's $825 or $835 in the state of Ohio. But like I said, my mortgage is less than $600 a month, and I got a 3-bedroom, 2-story. And I'll have something after I pay it off.
Yep. Good stuff, Kurt. Appreciate the call, man. I got to move on. I got one more I got to get to before the break.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Let's go to Alice on line 2. Alice, how are we doing today? I got about a minute here. What's going on?
The only thing I wanted to say is this. The Republicans are passing or trying to pass or planning on passing all these restrictive medieval ideas. But I just thought of this. Well, once they outlaw the contraception and we're already second-class citizens, we will have some form of gun control. I will lay you odds that the first woman that shoots a rapist or her husband because he's beating her, they will pass a law that no woman will be allowed to buy a gun or own one.
I don't doubt it, because we can't have mouthy women like you around.
That's exactly right.
We got to put you back in your place, Alice. No more.
I'll tell them like I told my husband when we got married 30-some years ago. Just remember the first time you tell me my place is in the kitchen, that there's iron skillets, rolling pins, and knives, and I know how to use all of them.
That is fabulous. Thanks, Alice. I appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Good stuff. Look, that's all right. I got to tell you, it's all right to be going. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Erica Payne from Patriotic Millionaire is going to be here to talk a little bit about minimum wage. It's been 13 years. Can you believe it? 13 years since the federal minimum wage was last raised. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day Local 212 UAW workers at Briggs returned to work. Briggs was directly involved in war production. 3,000 workers on 2 shifts made ball turrets for heavy bombers. Workers on both shifts walked off the job when management at the Outer Drive plant carried out a series of transfers and layoffs while expecting the same level of production. It had been the second walkout in a week. Management set a precedent of refusing to settle grievances of any kind. They routinely snubbed the union, insisting that they take any and all grievances to the War Labor Board. Local 212 President Jess Ferraza noted that it would take anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get a grievance processed. Workers were fed up with waiting. He added, quote, "It was like a fireman with a water bucket running around trying to put fires out. Management never cooperated. If the grievance were a justifiable one, they would not settle it. They would tell you to get the workers back to work. The strike came on the heels of a contentious state CIO convention earlier in the month. There, delegates debated the merits of the no strike pledge. Local 212 delegates were among a full third of the total delegates who made known their opposition to the pledge. Faraza argued that, quote, the no strike pledge has tied labor's hands, and as long as our hands are tied, the corporations will continue their attacks on labor. Briggs workers agreed to return to their jobs on the promise of direct settlement of grievances. They also geared up for the National CIO Convention, intent on overturning the wartime no strike pledge. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Republican politicos are all over Joe Biden for failing to stop inflation. Perhaps you wonder, though, what these squawkers would do if they were in charge. No need to wonder. Just look back to 1974, when Americans were being pummeled by price spikes that topped 12%, nearly double what we're enduring today. But by gollies, President Gerald Ford and his Republican contingent in Congress met the challenge head-on with a new magical program of economic uplift they called WIN, Whip Inflation Now. But it was nothing, just a political slogan with no magic and no action behind it. Price controls, antitrust action? No. GOP Inc. didn't want to offend, much less punish, corporate titans for a little profiteering. So they shifted the blame for inflation to consumers, demanding that families just say no to price gouging. Ford himself went on national TV, urging fellow citizens to join him in buying, quote, only those products and services priced at or below present levels. The core of the Republican program, then, was telling hard-hit wage earners to battle the monopolistic behemoths of big oil, big pharma, big food et al. On their own by simply refusing to pay inflated prices for the gasoline, medicines, groceries, and such that, hello, they had to have. As a reward, everyone who signed a form promising to be an inflation fighter was sent a nifty win button indicating their patriotic participation. Sure enough, Americans responded enthusiastically with an avalanche of ridicule. Even Ford's top economic advisor was whopper-jawed by the GOP's idea that the substance of their policy was a political button. It was surreal. I said to myself, this is unbelievable stupidity.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So 13 years since the last increase in the minimum wage. Think about that for a second. We have had 2 presidents in a row and only 3 presidents in the history of the minimum wage to not increase that minimum wage. It was 8 years during the Reagan administration, 8 years during Obama, and 4 years during Trump. This totally unacceptable. And the reality is, you stop and you think about the kind of wage theft that this is. I mean, we've got a situation where we've got people shooting themselves into space to get away from paying the minimum wage. It's crazy. And here to share some thoughts on just how bad things are for working people, I've asked Erica Payne to come talk with us. Erica is the founder of Patriotic Millionaires. You can check out their website at patrioticmillionaires.org. Erica, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here.
So 13 years, they told us, now this is where they told us, if we raise the minimum wage, Erica, inflation is going to go through the roof. And yet inflation went through the roof and we still haven't raised the minimum wage because explain that to me because I'm struggling.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. It's not even the 13 years. It goes back further than that. I mean, in 1968, the minimum wage was at its peak. And if it had been adjusted for inflation over just the last time since then, it would be around $14-15 an hour. And if it had been adjusted for productivity and inflation, it would be $22 an hour, $23 an hour. And so, I mean, what we basically, in the process of breaking the social compact, these wealthy CEOs have decided that the best way to, get what they need in the world is to make sure that regular working people don't get what they need. And it's a terrible way to run a country. It's a terrible way to run a business. And it's basically broken the connection that we all had between ourselves.
Yeah. Now, Dean Baker over at the Center for Economic Policy and Research, he says that it had kept up with just productivity, minimum wage would be about $26 an hour. So I keep going, where's that extra $18 an hour? Where'd that money go?
It's going right in the pockets of the CEOs, the lobbyists who work for them, and a small number of investors who control most of the market.
So when I say that we have created the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization off the back of poor and low-wage workers, I would not be wrong, would I?
You would be 100% right. And we've been doing it for a really long time. And unless there's a serious intervention from working people on both sides of the political aisle, I really worry that we're not going to address it. The thing that's so dumb about it, Rick, too, is that we could build exactly the kind of country that basically all of us want to live in if we would just connect the engine of American prosperity business to the engine of prosperity for each and every single American family. And the easiest way to do that is to raise the federal wage floor. So people are required to have their employees take part in the profits of the company, and the employees are what get them the profits in the first place. I mean, this is kind of basic.
It is kind of basic.
It's so sad that we're arguing about stuff this basic.
It is basic, but what you end up getting into, and this is where it's amazing to me how well and how easy it is for the wealth class to divide the working class. Jay Gould is the one who's given credit for saying, I could easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. Whether he said it or not, for me, is immaterial. It's the statement that matters, because I look at this as being one of those issues. Someone making, $15 an hour goes, oh, how can you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? I only make $15 an hour, without thinking that, gee, maybe your wages might go up a little bit too.
No, it's not that they'll go up a little bit. I mean, here's the thing, Rick. This is the thing that I think is freaking me out about the entire exercise. Slightly less than 50% of people in America work in low wage jobs. So all of those people are affected by the minimum wage. If you raise the minimum wage by, up to where it ought to be $15 an hour, that guy making 15 now is going to be making 25. It's not going to be a small increase. You raise that federal wage for value working people the way this country should value working people, and you're going to start to see people up and up the chain making more money. And eventually those billionaires are going to have to admit that this is a better business model for everybody, for the economy in general. And they're going to have to, maybe they can't afford a rocket.
Or a second rocket. Maybe they can have one.
A second rocket.
Maybe they can have one rocket.
Or a baby yacht to push along your big yacht.
Maybe an 80-foot rocket instead of a 100-foot.
Maybe. But no, I mean, here's the thing. I think one of the points of the patriotic millionaires, as our chairman always says, he's like, look, I'm not any more altruistic than the next guy. I'm just greedy for a different kind of country. And our members happen to believe they're all capitalists. They happen to believe that the best way to build a sustainable society, a sustainable economy in which they can make a lot of money, is to make sure that working people in America are making a whole bunch of money too.
Yeah, no, I saw a statistic earlier today that said 1 in 3 workers in this country are earning less than $15 an hour. So a raise in the minimum wage, and there is the Raise the Wage Act that would raise the minimum wage up to $15 an hour by 2025, and that can't get through, and it's not going to, or at least I don't think it is. Maybe you'll correct me here in a second.
But let me tell you why it's not going to get through, and I think that this is really important for people to understand. The working class is being screwed by both political parties. I mean, is one worse than the other? Yes. But neither one of them is doing what needs to be done. There are 8 Democrats right now who refuse to support the idea that a working person who works full time should make around 30 grand a year, $15 an hour. They refuse to support that idea. They even think that people who are in the service industry, who is mostly us ladies and a whole bunch of people of color, that we should make $2 an hour, hoping that on the off chance a happy customer is going to slip us some cash in the form of a tip. That's what the Democratic Party, 8 of its members, believe in. And so, they're joining with all of their Republican colleagues. So how committed is the Democratic Party in general to working people? I'd say they've got a big problem.
Yeah. So who are our eight Republican-like Democrats? I mean, look, at the end of the day, my premise has always been, right now, it appears that Republicans hate working people. The Democrats aren't always my best friend either, but at this moment, they're my only hope, because Republicans have shown me time and time again that they're not going to help. They've attacked my right to organize. They've attacked my health care. They've attacked my retirement. They've attacked social. Go down the list of everything they want to take away. They want to repeal the 20th century and move me back to the Lochner era, where if I'm hungry enough, desperate enough, and that I'll work for poverty wages in desperate conditions, that's my liberty. That's my right. They give me no hope. Democrats at least try and talk like maybe I've got hope. How can we push people to go, hey, you eight, get in line? Who are these?
And here's the thing. I mean, this is one of the great victories of the moment. As bad as everything feels right now, this fight for 15 didn't start but about 8 years ago. And political change takes a long time. President Biden ran on and won on a $15 minimum wage. He could not have been more straightforward about what he wanted to accomplish, that his Democratic colleagues are holding him up. So we've got a suggestion for President Biden. You need to lead by example. These folks who are working for the federal government and for people who contract the federal government live the values you want to see in the world. We challenge President Biden to raise the pay of federal contract workers to $20 an hour and start to make up that gap that started in the 70s and 80s between what people are contributing and what they're making. We've got a gap. We need to fill that gap, and President Biden can lead by example. We really urge him to do that. And then to demand those 8 Democrats get in the room and work out a deal.
Yeah, didn't he at the beginning of his presidency raise it up to 15?
He did 100%. And it was a great bright spot. He led by example at that point, and we've got inflation admittedly completely out of control. Those people working need an inflation bump.
No, I'm right there with you. No, I'm right there with you. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Erica Payne. She's the founder of the Patriotic Millionaires. Patrioticmillionaires.org is their website if you want to take a look at the work that they do. They've got a fantastic book, Tax the Rich. I highly suggest taking a look at that. We'll get links out on social media on how you can take a look at that. Now, this again, I want to go back to the 8, the heavy 8 there. Do we know?
Let's name them and shame them.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Who are they?
Maggie Hassan and Jean Shaheen, senators from New Hampshire, where the poorest county in New Hampshire, if you want to lead any kind of a stable life, requires $15 an hour. If you have a kid, it requires $25. That's in their poorest county in New Hampshire. Those two women refuse to get on this bill. John Tester from Montana, Chris Coons and Tom Carper from Delaware, both of whom are very close to President Biden. So that leads me to believe that the White House hadn't leaned on them quite as hard as they should have. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, always going to be a complete pain in the neck, and Angus King from Maine. Okay. I will say that Joe Manchin from West Virginia is senator of the poorest state, and he seems to believe that $11 is enough for his folks. I think that is ridiculous. West Virginia deserve better.
I'm with you,
but Joe Manchin wants to give them.
Is this a moment where we maybe start talking about something different than a minimum wage, perhaps? I like the idea of a prevailing wage. I look at my construction friends who have gone to a prevailing wage system to where maybe we start making people report their wages. We make these employers start reporting it. We start mandating a prevailing wage. We're saying this is what the minimum for this industry and this sector is going to be. And instead of, across the board blankets, where we then take that talking point, well, a minimum wage in New York City's different than a minimum wage in Dubuque. And that's true. Cost of livings are different. Is that something you might be interested in?
So here's the thing, Rick. I think that there are any number of ways to hit this wage issue. Definitely. In other countries, they do it. They have they operate in, chunks of industries. They negotiate in that industry. What we basically want to see is working people in America have a significant amount of additional power and money. Okay. That's what we're looking for. Working people with more power and more money. The cleanest, easiest way to accomplish that for probably about 30 to 40% of our workforce just off the bat.
Here it comes.
Is to raise the prevailing federal wage.
Okay. I thought you were going to go the union route, because me as a union guy, that's what I want to. I think every worker should be in a union. I think you should sit down with the employer, and I want companies to be wildly profitable, so that I can.
You know what, Rick?
I can demand
Listen, that's definitely, listen. The fact that the unions have been attacked for so many years is why working people are in the place that they're in right now too, because they lost that collective power. What I'd like to see is a $15 federal minimum wage. I'd actually like to see $18 to $20 federal minimum wage, but we'll get to that. And every person be part of a collective bargaining agreement. I mean, the working people of the United States need to band together. They can be a union in themselves. You know, they just have to decide that they want to take power away from the people who've been taking it from them for so many decades.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, I've been very fortunate in my work life. I've always been a member of a union. I've always felt empowered in my workplace to demand better wages, better hours, better working conditions, to demand more from my employer. And I want everyone to feel that they have the ability to do that and demand a better standard of living. But the sad reality is, over the last 40 years, we've been trained over almost like Pavlovian dogs. That anytime we talk about wages, we talk about increase in asking for a raise, we almost start getting jittery, and people start foaming at the mouth. And I'm like, now is the time where we should be demanding. Look, we got a guy, who they got two guys shooting rockets into space to see whose rocket's bigger or more phallic. Because they've figured out how to get more tax dollars by not paying our taxes, by figuring out the latest great crime by not paying taxes. And you go, when do we wake up from this?
Well, listen, about 70% of Americans think the economy is rigged against them.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, so they're in on the scam. The problem is that they're divided enough amongst themselves that they can't seem to pull their power together to topple over the elite class that is sucking all the money out of them. Okay. And taking the lifeblood out of them at the same time. And so, I mean, what we just want to say, it's also a great economic idea. I mean, what does a bar owner care more about? How much he's paying one bartender behind the bar, or how much every single one of his customers has in their pocket. The end. I'd rather have 30 customers making $15 an hour with that beer money in their pocket on a Friday night and pay my bartender $15 with tips on top. That's a net positive for me. People going out having a great time because they got a little money in their pocket. People want to participate in the economy. They want to participate in life. They want to go out to Chuck E. Cheese with their kids. Get some dollars in those pockets and get those businesses running.
Yeah, here's a novel concept. Disposable income. Something we haven't thought about in a long time.
Ever thought about because nobody has any more to dispose of except for these people who are disposing it into a rocket. And the thing is, in the process, it's destroying our country. And I'm getting really sick of it because it's just dumb. I mean, this is to the point where there's every single bit of data, because here's the thing. States have been trying this. Cities have been trying this. Counties have been trying this. We have experimented in the great lab that is the American experiment. We have experimented with paying people more. And guess what? It turns out great. Academic study after academic study has shown that if you put two places right next door to each other, one paying a livable wage, one not, businesses do better in the place with the livable wage. That's it. That's why raising the minimum wage is the single most popular issue in America today. In the last 20 years, 100% of ballot initiatives raising the minimum wage have passed, including in conservative states like Alabama. Tom Cotton won his re-election campaign the same year a minimum wage ballot initiative to $12 an hour passed. And now that jerk has a bill on the floor, a federal wage that'll raise it to $11 4 years from now. So he basically wants to give the people of Alabama a pay cut with the bill that he's pushing. They've already told him what they want.
Yeah, it's not surprising. And at the end of this, what is kind of shocking is our friends, especially on the Republican side, lots of outrage, lots of hate. In fact, we just saw the weekend rally that you saw in Florida, the Turning Points USA, lots of lights and flash and lots of hate and division. Not much on how to make people's lives better. And with all of this division, hate the guy over there because he's left, hate that Democrat, hate your neighbor. What they figured out is if they can keep us pitted against each other, eating each other, they don't have to talk about the tough stuff, like how are we going to make your lives better? How are we going to improve your communities? How are we going to get your kids better education? How are we going to get your families better health care? How are we going to improve your standards of living? Because what we know is conservative states have, much more dangerous workplaces, lower life expectancies, higher infant mortality rates. You can go down the list of the negatives that you see in these conservative states that have lower wages and all of this stuff, and yet we're still eating each other.
Well, it's so deep, Rick. These conservative states, we did a visit to West Virginia at the end of last year, because I don't know why people are surprised that guy walked away from this negotiation. But at the end of last year, I told my staff, that guy is not passing anything. And so I just wanted to go talk to some people in West Virginia. Like, what do you think of this cat? Right. And so I go to West Virginia with some of our members and a bunch of our staff people. We literally stood in the parking lot of Dollar General and stopped people coming out of Dollar General and asked them about what they think about the tax code, what they know about the tax code, and then what they thought about Joe Manchin and what they thought about work and stuff and what they thought about how the economy is working. 100% of people we talk to know that they are getting a raw deal. They know that people need to make more money. They know that the billionaire class hadn't paid a tax worth a damn in decades, and Joe Manchin's part of that. We saw the same thing in Kentucky. But I think at some point, Rick, you get so tired and so hopeless, you just don't want to hear another person spouting endless promises.
Yep.
And so that's what the Democrats have done. They dragged themselves over the finish line, selling higher taxes on rich people and a $15 minimum wage, and they failed. And so what they need to do now is pick progress out of this, and Biden needs to lead by example and set that federal wage floor for at least for people who work for this country that we love. Those people need to make $20 an hour. I'll see you 15. I'll raise you 20, Tom Cotton. Or you want to give the people in Alabama a pay cut.
And how do we make that happen? How do we get the president's ear? What's the final word? How do we get that little piece moving to get the rest of the ball going?
So go to the Patriotic Millionaires website, and by tomorrow morning I will have some way for you. We have it. We have the number, Rick. I can't remember the number. I'm so sorry. We will find the number.
We'll get it out on social media here soon.
Okay, good. Thank you. Put it on Twitter. Raise the wage, Joe Biden. $20.
There you go. We'll make sure that we get that out, and folks will be able to participate. But really good stuff, Erica. I appreciate you taking a little time for us. The work you guys do over at Patriotic Millionaires is so important. And we need more of it. We need more of what you're doing. So keep it up, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Rick, thank you so much. It was great being here with you.
Thanks so much. Our good friend Erica Payne. She's the founder of Patriotic Millionaires. Make sure you check out their website, patrioticmillionaires.org. Again, we'll get links out on social media. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. What are your thoughts? Should we raise the minimum wage? Or do you think it's just fine right where it is? Starvation, poverty, wages? Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1898. That was the day that the United States Armed Forces invaded Puerto Rico. The invasion was part of the Spanish-American War. In 1898, the U.S. State Department noted, quote, "It seems to be conceded that every year we shall be confronted with an increasing surplus of manufactured goods for sale in foreign markets if American operatives and artisans are to be kept employed year-round." Many business leaders in the U.S. clamored for market expansion. At the time, Spain was still a colonial presence in the Caribbean and Pacific. When a revolution in Cuba sought to drive out the Spanish, in the United States, the drum beats for war began to boom. Many saw this as an opportunity to expand the U.S. sphere of influence, although some labor leaders warned against war. One official from the Longshoremen's Union warned working people, quote, "If there is a war, you will furnish the corpses and the taxes, and others will get the glory." But soon labor leaders, including the president of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, got swept up in the war fever. In just a few months, the U.S. ousted the Spanish and became the colonial power in not only Puerto Rico, but also Guam and the Philippines, as well as Hawaii. This gave the United States footholds in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The small island of Puerto Rico remains a U.S. territory to this present day. Since the U.S. invasion, there have been movements for both Puerto Rican independence and also for full U.S. statehood. Today, the Puerto Rican people face a severe economic crisis, towering debt, and an unemployment rate more than double that of the United States. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. That website is over at actionnetwork.org. Letter to President Biden to tell him to deliver now for working people. Just one of the, we'll get it out on social media to let people know. You know, the red states, you got Montana, Arkansas, Alaska, Nebraska, South Dakota, ones that they're going after. Colorado, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, blue states, swing states of Florida, Ohio, Arizona, Nevada. So if you're in those areas, by all means, reach out to your senators. Say, hey, you know, we need some movement. And look, Pennsylvania hasn't raised its minimum wage since 2006. It's still $7.15 on the books here in Pennsylvania, but because the federal minimum wage is $7.25, got that whole 10-cent raise. Oh boy. And the thing is, I don't know how anyone exists on $7.25. In fact, as I said, there is nowhere in this country that you can rent an apartment for $7.25 an hour and 40-hour work week. There's just nowhere now. After this, coming out of the pandemic, there is literally nowhere. Before the pandemic, there was nowhere to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. I think it was like in 7% of the counties across the U.S., you could rent like a studio apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment. You could maybe find something. Now, nothing. And this again is one of those moments where inflation keeps going up and the minimum wage has just been completely eaten away. And that happened back during the Reagan years. Those 8 years, the minimum wage just got decimated. And then Republicans were successful in holding off the Democrats from doing anything during the Obama term because, hey, they just raised it a paltry amount at the end of the Bush term. And the last time it raised was in 2009 when Obama took office, and they couldn't get back to getting it done again. And those 8 years were gone. The 4 years during Trump, we've had 13 years of people who get up every day and work for a poverty starvation wage. And you go, but no, Rick, you just got to increase your skills. A third of workers in this country make less than $15 an hour. A third. That is a structural problem. That is a structural problem of workers not having enough power. But, and this is what I love. I love the economists' arguments. But, if you raise the wage, they'll lose jobs. Maybe, but the reality is that hasn't borne out. In the places where minimum wages have gone up, jobs have actually gone up a little bit because, you know what? People had more money. There's more money circulating in the economy because, as Erica pointed out, would you rather have more customers who have more disposable income in your establishments? Yes. And I think back to an economist I had on the program, probably 15 years ago. He said, look, if you give a rich person the choice between a $20,000 tax break and 20,000 people coming into his establishment with money, he'd better take the 20,000 people coming in with money because that's how jobs are created. Because that's a guy wanting to meet the demand. That's how business works. If you give him the 20 grand, he's just going on vacation. And that, my friends, is what our billionaire class has done. They've been on vacation for a long time. You want to talk about welfare queens and kings? There they are, living off the backs of working people. Sad, sad stuff.
We're already committed to a level of warming, and these extremes will get more extreme in the future.
Cascading consequences are piling up. Scientists warn it will get worse.
Russia is blackmailing us. Russia is using energy as a weapon.
EU warns member nations to conserve gas as Russia tightens its grip. Plus,
climate change is literally an existential threat to our nation and to the world.
Biden announces plans for executive actions to tackle climate change.
All of those plans and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It's not just Europe, because over 100 million people in the U.S. are under heat alerts. In fact, this week, nearly 20% of the U.S. population will likely see a temperature at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember when you wished that everybody who denied climate change would go to hell? Unfortunately, hell came to us.
Welcome to hell, or as we like to call it, your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, rough week for the Green News Report.
Yes, extreme heat continues to engulf vast regions of the Northern Hemisphere. In the United States, more than 100 million Americans across 28 states remain in the grip of a sprawling, record-setting heat wave. Officials in Europe, where air conditioning is rare, are scrambling to provide cooling options amid a rising death toll. The intense, prolonged heat shattered records in the United Kingdom, with temperatures surpassing 104 degrees Fahrenheit for the first time on record, a temperature once thought inconceivable, with the heat helping to spark and spread hundreds of wildfires around the country. The UK Met Office concludes the new record would be virtually impossible without man-made global warming. Chief Scientist Professor Stephen Belcher delivered a stark warning.
Climate change driven by greenhouse gases has made these extreme temperatures possible, and we're actually seeing that possibility now. If we continue under a high emission scenario, we could see temperatures like this every 3 years.
I think it's going to be more than every 3 years.
Cascading consequences from the relentless heat go beyond deaths, wildfires, and crop failures. In Germany, the Rhine River is becoming too shallow to allow ships to transit. In France and Switzerland, several nuclear power plants are offline or at reduced power because the rivers used to cool the reactors are too hot. Skyrocketing energy demand is exacerbating Europe's energy supply crunch caused by Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. The European Commission on Wednesday said that Russia is weaponizing its natural gas exports to Europe to divide the coalition, and warned that Russia might further reduce or cut off gas deliveries on a key Russian pipeline. Officials urged member countries to immediately begin reducing natural gas consumption now to fill up gas storage faster to prevent shortages this winter.
Not good.
Here in the U.S., after major setbacks from the right-wing Supreme Court curtailing EPA authority over carbon pollution and Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia again derailing President Biden's climate and clean energy agenda in Congress, the president unveiled plans to enact a suite of actions to tackle the climate crisis using executive authority.
Sweet.
Speaking at a decommissioned coal plant being converted into a wind energy manufacturing hub, Biden stopped short of declaring a national climate emergency, which would redirect federal resources to bolster renewable energy and help accelerate the shift away from fossil fuels. Biden criticized Republicans for their decades of blocking climate policy and pledged many more actions to come.
I come here today with a message. As president, I have a responsibility to act with urgency and resolve when our nation faces clear and present danger. And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger. The health of our citizens and our communities is literally at stake. So let me be clear. Climate change is an emergency. I will do everything in my power to clean our air and water, protect our people's health, to win the clean energy future. This, again, sounds like hyperbole. Our children and grandchildren are counting on us.
Initial actions will include directing billions in funding to help communities adapt to climate impacts like extreme heat, storms, fires, and floods, assistance to states to boost electric grid stability, weatherization, and building energy efficiency, expanding programs to help low-income families afford heating and cooling costs, and opening up new areas in the Gulf of Mexico to offshore wind production. Now remember, while this summer is hot, it will be one of the coldest summers we'll ever experience for the rest of our lifetimes.
You just had to finish it on that cheery note, didn't you? For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today or didn't have the heart to, Check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So earlier today, as I was preparing for the show today, thinking about my next guest, I was remembering a conversation I had on election night 2016, as it was becoming apparent that Trump was going to probably pull it out. This conservative friend of mine said, "Hey, it's going to be interesting watching liberals turn into states' rights advocates and finding." The states' rights arguments. And I don't think he knew how clairvoyant he was. And the reality is Republicans, they've, through their think tank systems and the coordination of message that they've had over the last 50 years, they've been so much farther ahead through ALEC and their drilled down organizations to get down into county levels. They've understood the inner workings of government, and we now find out just how important secretaries of states are, how important attorneys generals are, and that's why I've asked my next guest to come share some thoughts. He's running for attorney general in the state of Massachusetts. He's also a former assistant attorney general. That's why I've asked Quentin Palfrey to come talk with us. Quentin, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So, like I said, I'm looking at this moment, and, you're looking at the attorney general's race who, 10 years ago, nobody thought about. Now we're going, oh my God, this is the last line of defense in saving our liberties, and we're desperate to find people. That's why I thought so important to talk to you. Why do you think now people are finally waking up to how important these positions are?
Yeah, it's an extraordinary and terrifying moment in American history. We've got the Supreme Court attacking our fundamental rights. Our democracy is literally under attack. An armed mob stormed the Capitol to try and disrupt the peaceful transition of power at the direction of a sitting president. And we've got Congress failing to lead on some of the biggest challenges of our time: the climate crisis, gun violence, racial injustice. And if you ask yourself, where is the leadership going to come from to rebuild our democracy, to stand up for our civil rights, and to lead on the really big civilization-defining challenges like the climate crisis? It's not going to come from the federal courts. It's not going to come from the broken Congress. It's going to come from blue states like Massachusetts and from the grassroots. And you sort of then see how important attorneys general can be. Massachusetts in particular has this wonderful tradition of leadership that dates back to the founding of this country. The Constitution was based on the Massachusetts Constitution that John Adams wrote. We were at the center of the abolitionist movement against slavery. We led the way on equal access to marriage and universal access to health care, although we got a long way to go on that. And I think it's really important for Massachusetts, and in particular the AG office, to lead again in this important time.
Yeah, you look at the sad reality. There is an attempt, and I've been saying this for years, the Republicans want to repeal the 20th century. So if we're going to save any of the progress of the past several generations fighting, it's going to be the states who are going to have to defend that. It's going to be the attorneys generals who are fighting that. It's going to be folks like you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just take our democracy for a moment. Even after the events of January 6th, we're seeing history unfold before our very eyes. President Biden, I'm a proud alumni of the administration. I worked on day one in that administration. President Biden went to John Lewis's hometown on Martin Luther King Day and said, let's do something about it. He was blocked by Mitch McConnell, by Joe Manchin, by Kyrsten Sinema, by every Republican member of that caucus. And so you sort of ask yourself, well, who's going to rebuild democracy in this time? It's got to be the states, right? That's a terrifying thought.
No, protecting voting rights. You look at some of the things that have happened already thanks to the Supreme Court's decision, and you just go, most of us have grown up in a time where we think it's automatic. Democracy is what it is. We're always going to have the right to vote. Institutions are going to be around. I'm not so sure about that anymore.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think we're at a time where faith in democracy is at a low ebb. And I think that where you started this conversation, Rick, about, Republicans, sort of talking about this new era. Look, they planned this for a long period of time. Take the Supreme Court, right? As shocked and appalled and outraged as I was at the Dobbs decision, this is the culmination of a couple decades worth of work stacking the federal judiciary. This was a plan. And they planted the seeds through the Federalist Society and through the litmus tests that they put on judges, the pressure they put on elected officials, these campaign finance problems of essentially buying the U.S. Senate. And over a period of time, they were able to stack the courts. I mean, the coup de grace of that was, when they blocked the Merrick Garland appointment and were able to sort of take that Supreme Court seat. But now that they have stacked that court, it's going to be a really long time before we're going to get anything other than radical conservative decisions out of that court. And so we're going to have to look to other areas for justice.
Yeah, and that's the sad reality. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Quentin Palfrey, former Assistant Attorney General of Massachusetts. Now he's a candidate for Massachusetts Attorney General. You can check out his website, QuentinPalfrey.com. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Maybe even help out if you're in the Massachusetts area. Maybe help with the campaign. Maybe a donation to help run the campaign. These things are expensive because you have pledged to reject outside money from these super PACs. Because, the big money super PACs are funding a lot of this stuff. I guess two of the people in the race have, and the third person hasn't. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, so one of my opponents has received money from a super PAC in her last race that was funded by Jim Walton and Bain Capital and Reed Hastings and a lot of for-profit healthcare companies. The other is self-funding a campaign to the tune of many millions of dollars. We're a clean elections campaign. And look, since Citizens United, we've seen corporate money flow into these elections and really distort the political dialogue. It's part of the reason why we haven't had more action on the climate crisis. It's part of the reason we haven't had more action on guns. And in attorney general races, it's particularly important because if you want the AG to stand up against the Walmarts of the world, against the big banks and the big polluters, if you want them to stand up for healthcare as a human right, you can't also have those corporations funding those elections because it's going to be very hard for the Attorney General to be what we call the people's lawyer, to stand up for workers, for civil rights. And so that's why I think it's so important to have a clean elections campaign running for Attorney General.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to then hold someone accountable for wage theft or I don't know, unsafe working conditions. We see a lot of stuff with Amazon going on. We've all kinds of stuff with Walmart, as you point out. Yeah, I can see there would be a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And in the context of lawyers, it can be actually a conflict of interest that leads to a recusal problem. And then if you have to recuse from that, then, you can't take on those cases. You've got to assign them to somebody else. It can be a real impediment. I'm glad you brought up wage theft because it's a really big issue in Massachusetts and in our campaign. We estimate that it's about $1 billion problem. Last year, the AG office recovered about $750,000. And you've got rampant misclassification of workers, trying to take away their benefits, take away collective bargaining rights. It's something that affects working families, makes it really hard for folks to make a living. It also has a tendency to affect some of the most vulnerable populations. And so it's a place where we both need more power to enforce the law against wage theft. And we need to devote more resources to really investigating those problems.
And again, I keep coming back to this. I look at someone like Grover Norquist and his famous comment, we want government so small we can drag it in the bathtub and drown it. And it's because of things like wage theft. We want such a small investigatory body. We want as few of regulators and people to oversee things as possible so that no one ever bothers to be able to check this stuff out. Someone sent me a thing the other day. It said for OSHA to inspect every workplace in this country, it'd be like 144 years with the current number of inspectors they've got. Same thing on the wage front theft front. Because I saw another thing that said, you add up all of the robberies, all of the bank jobs, all the convenience stores, all of the, all the stick a gun at somebody, give me your money. Wage stuff is like 3 times more than all of that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And it does come down to enforcement. We have to devote the resources. We're one of the leading voices for workers and for labor rights. And, you got to have a workers' champion in that job. We're also fighting very hard for what we call the Fair Share Amendment, which is to ask people who make more than $1 million a year, so these are very wealthy people, to pay a little bit more so that we can invest in transportation and education and building an economy that works for everyone. Because one of the things we've seen over the last couple of decades is, the very rich have gotten richer and richer. Big corporations have gotten more and more powerful. Everybody else is staying the same or falling behind. And we need to restructure the economy so that it works for everyone. Some of that is fighting for workers' rights and investing in transportation and in education. Some of that is taking on challenges like healthcare access and healthcare costs and student loan debt. But you need workers' champions. You need folks out there fighting for economic justice and racial justice. And I think the AG office is a good platform for a lot of that.
QuentinPalfrey.com, the website. Make sure you check that out. Lots to see, lots to do there. Make sure if you got a couple of bucks, maybe hand a couple over. Could always use it, I'm sure. So for you personally, what's the big issue? What made, I always ask people who run for office, what made you jump into the fishbowl? Because that's really what it is. What made you throw yourself in the middle of all this and take the arrows and all that are sure to come and have already come along? What did it for you?
Yeah, I was mentioning to you before we went on air, I ran for lieutenant governor of Massachusetts 2018. It was right after that Charlottesville incident. And I remember seeing the small group of students. They were standing in front of a sign that said Students Against White Supremacy. All around them, there were these people holding tiki torches, and some of them were members of the Ku Klux Klan. There were some swastikas on some of those signs. And I just sort of remember asking myself, what am I going to tell my grandchildren that I did in this moment when our democracy and our values were so obviously under attack? And I want to be able to say that I stood up and I fought back. I screamed till my lungs were hoarse that that's not the kind of America that we want to live in. I've had the great honor to serve at both the federal and the state level. I worked in the White House under President Obama. I worked in the Biden administration on day one. But I'll tell you, I think at this moment in history, the states are where it's at. That's where the fight's going to be on some of the most important issues of our time. That's civil rights, that's economic justice, that's the climate crisis, that's gun violence. And, there's a lot of issues that we need to tackle. But I think a lot of the most important issues are going to be taken on at the state level.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I hope people are heard what you just said and take that to heart, especially come November, because these midterm elections, these call them off-year elections, whatever you want to call them, these midterm elections generally don't get the same turnout as the presidential. And I always say these should be the ones that get the bigger kind of turnout, because these are the ones that affect your life even more than the presidential. So these are the ones you should be getting out and voting for folks like you.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, we've seen the attorneys general take on some really big fights recently. I mean, the AG office in Massachusetts just took on Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family, whose lies brought us the opioid crisis, took on ExxonMobil for lying to consumers, took on the Trump administration time and time again. And God forbid that we get another Republican administration. We're going to need the AG offices to fight back against those big issues. We've got a climate crisis. Every level of government, from the international community to our Congress, to a lot of our states, are failing to meet the urgency of the moment. We're going to have to move urgently towards a clean energy transition, and a lot of that's going to happen at the grassroots and at the state level.
Last question I've got for you. Give me the 30-minute why you. I mean, the 30 second,
so I think, look,
30-second why you.
30 second. I think I've got the experience, having been a former assistant attorney general. I'm a truly progressive candidate, really believe in healthcare as a human right and the economy that works for everyone. And then I've got the independence. I take on special interests. I'm going to really stand up and be the people's lawyer. So I think it's that experience, those progressive values, and that independence that really sets me apart.
Good stuff, Quentin. I appreciate talking with you. It's good having you on. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Thank you. I'd love to.
Good stuff.
Good night.
Thanks so much, Quentin. QuentinPalfrey.com, the website. Make sure you check that out. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. Love to hear your thoughts. Right back after this. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Let's go to line 1. We've got Todd in Illinois. Todd, how are we doing tonight?
I'm glad to have the night off.
I'm glad you got the night off too.
I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, man. You know, I'm a first-time caller, so I've been listening to you for a while since you've been on CPT. So, and you know, you have a lot of good points and good guests and everything like that.
I appreciate that.
I just want to. What's
on your mind?
No, I just want to address the idea about, you know, wages and affordability of housing and stuff like that. You know, I've been working for a grocery store for, I don't know, I've worked for 2 grocery stores in the past 10 years and stuff like that. And every year it's like I only get, like, you know, 25-cent raise or 50-cent raise, you know, and this and that. You know, just like, come on. I kind of live in an affluent neighborhood of South Chicago and Naperville. And, you know, the apartments are, you know, like the least apartment you can find around here is like $1,200.
Wow.
And I mean, at $12.75 an hour for me, you know, it's like
you can't afford.
Plus, you know,
there's no way to afford.
There's no way to afford it. And plus, the company is jackassing around people's hours. You know, sometimes I have 40 hours, sometimes I have 32. You know, it's like. I just don't know what to do anymore, man. You know, my brother wants me to move out. I live with my brother, but, you know, dude, I was trying to tell him, I'm like, man, there's no way I can afford it, you know, with the economy right now, you know, to just move out. You know, I don't bother him all that much, but, you know, it's like, I mean, you know, for God's sake, you know, I mean, is there some kind of thing with the UFCW that I'm not knowing about, or... You know, I mean, the United Food and Commercials Union.
Right. Explain.
You know, and, well...
Now, how'd they come into this? Do they represent you at the grocery store?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay. Without knowing what your contract is and without knowing any of that stuff, I can't comment, but I'll tell you, over the years, I've heard a lot of people who aren't happy with their contracts at grocery stores at some of them, and a lot of it has to do with the union density in the grocery industry. Walmart has pushed wages down for everybody across the board, as they're basically crushing the margins. That's a huge part of it. And also, you know, look, union density has dropped considerably. When I started working back in the mid to late 80s, union density in this country was about 25%. We're down in the private sector, we're just over 6%. I remember.
I remember years ago, I worked for throughout my 20s and like almost 1/4 of my 30s, I was only making like $8.50 an hour, man, living around here. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like, I didn't get a raise till like $10 until I was like 35 years old. You know, and it's like.
See,
even that, and then they raise the prices of food and the prices of housing, and that's the point I'm trying to get to is I don't know if it's the inflationary rate or but the more you make, the more they bump it up. It's like in terms of affordability.
But the problem is we're not making more. I mean, I would understand that argument, Todd. If you were making a reasonable wage and prices were going up, you go, okay, that makes sense. But too many people aren't. Too many people are living as you are, struggling to make ends meet. I can't tell you how many people I know who are in similar situations. We're living 2-3 people together. We're cobbling together an existence, and we're doing what we're supposed to.
Absolutely.
We're showing up. We're doing our 40 hours. We're working hard, or we're getting jerked around, working 32 hours because, well, that's what they've got us doing. At the end of the day, this is where we need to be really pushing for progressive politicians to really push for laws that are going to make lives better. And this is where the Democrats have fallen down. Republicans, they're never going to help.
Yeah.
But Democrats haven't been.
The thing is that at every turn, the Republicans are blocking it. So,
but
and it just they want to keep us down low, as much as possible. Like I'm almost thinking about moving to Tennessee, where I got to afford a house for like $600 a month or something like that. Because up here, at least I have a mortgage. The mortgages are less than the price of a damn apartment.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, and part of it has to do with we've made we've made millionaires off of people's desperations, and that's a huge problem where we're at now. You've got too many slumlords also jacking up the rent to make their millions.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Well, thank you for your time. I just wanted to interject, for a couple minutes, but. All right, man.
Thank you so much.
See you later.
Have a great night. Thanks for calling. Call back anytime. No, this is one of those things, and this is where it's infuriating when you're talking about poverty wages. We're told you go work hard, play by the rules, you get ahead, and you listen to somebody like Todd here, who's doing what society has said. You show up, you do your job, you work hard, playing by the rules, still struggling to make ends meet. And look, I look at the reality: $7.25 an hour. He's not even at minimum wage, but he's still one of the 1/3 of workers in this country who are making less than $15 an hour. If we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, would Todd's life have gotten better? And I wish I would have asked him that. Would his life be a little bit better? Yeah, it would be a little bit better. If we raised it to 20, would it be better? Yeah, a little bit better. But why don't you just raise it to 100? I've heard that argument too. Nobody's saying that. I'm saying that raise it to a point where someone could make a living. I was just reading a study here before the show started that said, to live in any major city in this country, to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, you need to make $24 an hour. And this is where my idea of a prevailing wage has to play into this. Much like we've done in the building trades, you have a prevailing wage for jobs that this is what this industry pays in this location. So that you aren't going to have the same wage for someone working in a grocery store in Chicago as you have in Birmingham, Alabama, or Dubuque. This is how you could make the difference. But we're not even talking about raising the wage at all. Nothing. And we're not giving people the tools like I would want to say, hey, we should give them the ability to unionize. We should give them the ability to sit down with the employer and say, hey, how much did you make? I want a part of that. Because for me, that's the perfect environment. I don't think there should be a minimum wage law. I think I want a portion of the profits my labor creates. That's what I want. I don't want a minimum. I want what I earned. That's what we should be fighting for. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2 on On this day in labor history, the year was 1898. That was the day that the United States Armed Forces invaded Puerto Rico. The invasion was part of the Spanish-American War. In 1898, the U.S. State Department noted, quote, "It seems to be conceded that every year we shall be confronted with an increasing surplus of manufactured goods for sale in foreign markets if American operatives and artisans are to be kept employed year-round." Many business leaders in the U.S. clamored for market expansion. At the time, Spain was still a colonial presence in the Caribbean and Pacific. When a revolution in Cuba sought to drive out the Spanish, in the United States, the drum beats for war began to boom. Many saw this as an opportunity to expand the U.S. sphere of influence, although some labor leaders warned against war. One official from the Longshoremen's Union warned working people, quote, "If there is a war, you will furnish the corpses and the taxes, and others will get the glory." But soon labor leaders, including the president of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, got swept up in the war fever. In just a few months, the U.S. ousted the Spanish and became the colonial power in not only Puerto Rico, but also Guam and the Philippines, as well as Hawaii. This gave the United States footholds in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The small island of Puerto Rico remains a U.S. territory to this present day. Since the U.S. invasion, there have been movements for both Puerto Rican independence and also for full U.S. statehood. Today, the Puerto Rican people face a severe economic crisis, towering debt, and an unemployment rate more than double that of the United States. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Republican politicos are all over Joe Biden for failing to stop inflation. Perhaps you wonder, though, what these squawkers would do if they were in charge. No need to wonder. Just look back to 1974, when Americans were being pummeled by price spikes that topped 12%. Nearly double what we're enduring today. But by gollies, President Gerald Ford and his Republican contingent in Congress met the challenge head-on with a new magical program of economic uplift they called WIN, Whip Inflation Now. But it was nothing, just a political slogan with no magic and no action behind it. Price controls, antitrust action? No. GOP Inc. didn't want to offend, much less punish, corporate titans for a little profiteering, so they shifted the blame for inflation to consumers, demanding that families just say no to price gouging. Ford himself went on national TV, urging fellow citizens to join him in buying, quote, only those products and services priced at or below present levels. The core of the Republican program, then, was telling hard-hit wage earners to battle the monopolistic behemoths of Big Oil, Big Pharma, Big Food et al. On their own by simply refusing to pay inflated prices for the gasoline, medicines, groceries, and such that, hello, they had to have. As a reward, everyone who signed a form promising to be an inflation fighter was sent a nifty win button indicating their patriotic participation. Sure enough, Americans responded enthusiastically with an avalanche of ridicule. Even Ford's top economic advisor was whopper-jawed by the GOP's idea that the substance of their policy was a political button. It was surreal. I said to myself, this is unbelievable stupidity.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So something I agree with Ben Sass, the senator from Nebraska, on. He says that he believes Nancy Pelosi should go to Taiwan and President Biden should make it abundantly clear to Chairman Xi that there's not a damn thing the Chinese Communist Party can do about it. And I agree. I agree wholeheartedly that's how that should go down. Because there's no way now you can blink and back out of this. I'm hoping Biden doesn't do anything to pull her back. She now has to go. This is one of those things where even if she didn't really want to go, gotta go. And gotta make a big display out of it. At least I think so. Here to share some thoughts on on that. Also, some of the other top news of the day. I've asked our good friend Bob Ney to come share some thoughts, former Ohio congressman and political analyst, one of the smartest guys I know on the political front. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. That's
so I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this statement by Ben Sass, and I'm actually in 100% agreement. She has to go.
right. The last speaker to go was Gingrich.
Right.
And look, China, when the Dalai Lama wanted to visit the United States, China has a fit over it. I mean, they get out of control. It's a psychotic experience for China when the Dalai Lama wants to come here. Think about that. They tried to have Obama stop him. They tried to have Bush stop him from coming here. They're obsessed with certain things. Taiwan is another obsession that they have. And they have threatened and warned, potential military. They've actually told our military that potentially they will do something in a military sense. But now that the Speaker, and by the way, Speaker's correct, we never pre-announce trips on certain dates, that the Congress is going to go because of security reasons. So she said that. But she's also kind of not saying yet that the trip is there, although I believe the trip's being put together, and I agree 100%. She has to go now because they have talked about putting the trip together. She needs to go over. The Chinese only understand force in an issue. If you look at most favored nation status, Rick, we've had a vote on it, then we had another vote, and that was temporary, and then the big, I call it the unholy alliance of Gingrich and Clinton for the permanent trade status, which, I was with Bernie Sanders and Dennis Kucinich and Lo Biondo and others. I can go down the list, La Tourette of Cleveland, doing press conferences, warning people, if you give them permanent trade status, they get what they want. They will never, ever after that comply in any great direction on human rights or fairness with us. And sure enough, that's what happened. You know that. We all know that happened. And then people still say, well, we need another trade agreement. But with China, the one good thing Trump did was he was a modern-day president who actually got aggressive. And Biden kept the tariffs. So he's done the right thing. But now is not the time to, cater to the Chinese because, they're angry if we go.
Or cave. Or cave in this moment because, what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. I can easily see, China doing that with Taiwan.
Sure. I think that the Ukraine for the Chinese was a test run of how we would react, what we would do or not do, we meaning us, the world. And I think it was a test run for the Chinese, but they really don't appreciate accommodating them. They only understand when you push back. And history has proven that. We accommodated them with permanent trade status, and they literally walked all over us. So I think Speaker Pelosi has to go. I predict to you she will go. She will go over.
And I think this has to be a moment where, and I know this is probably a pipe dream, but this has to be a show of bipartisanship. There should be Republicans and Democrats going.
Right. There will be.
No,
if the speaker goes, which I think she will, it will be a bipartisan trip.
No, it's got to be leadership. There's got to be Republican leadership going.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
This has got to go. Look, this is we may have our infighting. We may bicker over this, that, and this is fighting we do like brothers and sisters in a house.
Right.
But you mess with the family, we're
right. That's a good point.
No, look, we can fight, we can bicker, and you come to my house, our kids are at each other. But you go outside and someone goes, that's a different ball game.
That's it.
And I think we gotta show that kind of unity. Now, is that possible? I actually don't know.
We'll see.
But I would be hopeful. But I look at General Mark Milley's statement that the Chinese have become significantly more aggressive and dangerous over the past 5 years, and I go, now you're going to have to draw that line and mean it.
Exactly. Right. They've gotten more aggressive. With their show of military strength. And again, talk about aggression. When the Speaker of the U.S. House, third in line of the presidency, or the second, if something happens to the president, when they make a statement that if she goes, that they'll consider a forceful response and indicate a military response, That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And if we back down to them, we're going to give them what they want, which is to understand they can absolutely push us around.
And then the message that sends to our allies, even still, I mean, you think of Japan, what message is that going to send to them?
And I think this is a moment for the White House, too, to back the Speaker and the trip because, again, they have kept the tariffs. I was worried they were going to undo some tariffs. They haven't as of this point. They've kept the tariffs. And, Biden, as president, was previously, of course, a senator. He's been around a long time. He knows what it's like dealing with the Chinese.
Well, let's hope that this.
I hope so.
I'm hoping he does what I think he's going to do. I'm pretty sure he's going to do what I think he's going to do, but I'm waiting for him to do what I think he's going to do. If that makes sense.
Right, but when I first heard about the trip, the fact that there was, a leak about a potential trip meant there was a trip in the works. That's what that means.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I wanted to get your thoughts on Steve Bannon. Guilty. Steve Bannon's guilty, then evidently went on his podcast and said that the January 6th staff, all the people working on the committee there, you better preserve your documents because there's going to be a real committee. And the Republicans are going to come and there's going to be all kinds of investigations and basically threatening the January 6th committee.
I think there's a couple of things. First of all, this was a different thumbing of the nose at Congress by somebody than the past. We've had Democrats and Republicans who have refused and have been found in contempt of Congress, and it goes down that rabbit hole in D.C. that goes through this court system, and they all evaporate. They all vanish. It's been historical. Everybody knows that. You can, have a contempt of Congress. You can defy a subpoena. Now, if you go defy a subpoena in your home county, or I do, you're in big trouble. But you can defy a congressional subpoena. It's been that way for years. This is the first time that I can recall that justice took a step in the direction of taking it into the actual court realm of where these things belong. And now this should send a chilling effect, is what it'll do, across the bow of people who are going to be subpoenaed to Congress. That's one. Number two, if, in fact, the Republicans take control of the House, that's if, the emphasis will be from the Freedom Caucus, et cetera, to have this hearing and that hearing. But if you get a speaker, let's say McCarthy, if he would become speaker, I don't believe that he would convene, I don't care what he said or he's indicated to get elected speaker, I don't believe he would convene a committee to right away, counter anything that the January 6th committee did, because he would bog the House down. I don't think he will. I don't think he'll have the intestinal fortitude to do it. I don't think he'll have the political desire to do it. I really don't.
No, I don't think he has.
He'll be pressured.
No, I'm sure he'll be pressured, but I think you're right. I don't think he has the intestinal fortitude to do it. But then there's the other part of me goes, I don't think he'll have the intestinal fortitude not to. I think there's part of me goes, he'll just get run over like a train wreck, and the lunatics will be running the asylum. I mean, I look at this past weekend. Did you watch any of that Nazi rally down in Florida?
No, I didn't see it.
That Turning Point USA, they had their youth action summit, where you had Matt Gaetz saying, have you noticed that the women who are out there fighting for abortion rights are the ones who aren't going to get impregnated?
I saw that clip. Right.
You got gun fetish Barbie saying that I wasn't an escort for Ted Cruz, but it's the coolest thing I've heard about him. And then Trump saying, I've always wanted the Congressional Medal of Honor. They wouldn't let me give it to myself. I mean, that's the kind of crazy, and well, of course, Marjorie Three Names, saying that we're a Christian nation. We should all be Christian nationalists. I mean, they're not even hiding the agenda. They're not even whispering it. They're shouting it with flashing lights and, flames shooting out around them. This is now sadly who your former party is.
Right. Yeah, I didn't watch it. I mean, I saw some outtakes and clips of it, but I didn't watch it.
Yeah, well, it was interesting to say the least.
Now they have a whole series, Mother Jones. I did read the series they had on it of the most bizarre moments of they call it the dumbest moments of the confab. I did read that.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw the Dumb Juniors spiel of.
Yes, I saw that.
Trying to act like Joe Biden. Yeah.
Right, and then they had these WWE wrestling entrances.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I saw that.
The flashing lights, the flames, the music, the sound bites. It was really well done. I mean, theatrically it was fabulous. Content-wise, scary.
Right.
And like I said, it was basically a Nazi rally. And what they didn't talk about is how you're going to make all those kids' lives any better. They just talked about how to divide into hate. And yet here we are. Yesterday, 13 years ago, was the last time we raised the minimum wage in this country.
Right. Exactly. Just $7.25?
Yeah, still $7.25. And you know what? I don't know how you make a living on $7.25. I don't know how you make a living on $15 an hour, and yet a third of the country is living on less than $15 an hour.
I was thinking about that today. I mean, 13 years, and then $7.25 an hour. I mean, just that would be impossible.
How do you justify that? I mean, look, there are 8 Democrats who haven't signed on to it in the Senate. How is that possible? Look, I get why the Republicans don't. They hate working people. I get that. That's simple. I understand it. Eight freaking Democrats in the Senate. I get Manchin and Sinema. They kind of get a pass because they're Republican light. But you throw in the 2 from Delaware, the 2 from New Hampshire. You got King from Maine. You got Tester out in Montana, and you go, explain to me. I'm struggling here.
Right.
I mean, even in your state of Ohio, how do you live on $7.25? There's nowhere in this country you can rent an apartment for minimum wage. Nowhere.
Right. You can't. There's always the talk about putting. I supported the minimum wage back in the 90s, and there was always talk about doing the scale where it would go into a graduated scale over a period
adjusted
of time.
For inflation.
Right. There was always talk about that. And
had we done that 13 years ago like I wanted to do, we wouldn't be having this. It wouldn't be $7.25. It would have gone up. And right now, in this moment, this year, it would have gone up, like 9%?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that your wages would have kept up with inflation. And by the way, the fact that food and gas prices are just wiping you out and making people literally homeless, that wouldn't happen. Gee, what a novel concept.
Right. In 1990, I think it was 95 or 96, we did it. It was like $4.75 an hour, and then it kicked in a second time to like $5 something an hour. I think it was a year later.
Yeah, $5.35.
So I think we had, but only 2 where it graduated in. And then the next time it was raised, I wasn't in office anymore, so that had to be after 2006.
Yeah, it was 2009 was 2008 was the last time it was passed. 2009 was the last time it increased because it happened during the Bush years. Because there are only 3 presidents now. Only 3 presidents that haven't.
Right.
Only 3 presidents that haven't raised the minimum wage. You got Reagan during his 8 years, you've got Obama during his 8 years, and you got Trump during his 4 years that haven't seen a minimum wage increase.
And see, in 2000, when they did that in 2007 era, they had 3 graduated hits on it where it would increase, but then it stopped after that. When we did it, I think we did 2 different hits where it went up and then up again.
Right.
But they've never done it where it consistently goes up. They quote evaluate it as the economy runs, but it's been 13 years, and in 13 years times have changed.
Yeah, when I started working, the minimum wage was $3.35. And that had been passed in 1981, and it didn't get passed again until 1990, where they took it up to a whopping $3.80. And you go, that wasn't even close to enough to keep up with the inflation of those Reagan years.
Right. Right.
Then I went up to 4.25, then 4.75 the year you passed it, and then 5.15 the next bump that you talked about, and then all the way up to 5.85 and so forth, until we got to that whopping, that wealthy 7.25.
And then there's another thing with the COLAs, the cost of living, increases, which Social Security has, and sometimes they're lower, sometimes they're a little higher. But if you did consider building in, I'll call it a cost of living increase, it really doesn't cause an inflationary factor. It really doesn't.
No, it doesn't. The studies have already shown us this. It's that belief. We're told, oh, no, if we raise the wage, the price of everything will go up. In fact, somebody sent me this just yesterday, that, in New Hampshire, the cost of a Big Mac in New Hampshire was like, I don't know, it was like $4.85 or something. It was the cost in New Hampshire was $4.83, minimum wage $7.25. The cost of a Big Mac in Washington State was $4.67. So it's actually cheaper in Washington State, where Washington State's minimum wage is $14.49, almost literally double. And yet it's cheaper in Washington for the Big Mac than it is in New Hampshire. And you go, how's that possible? Well, it's possible because, someone's getting rich off your back. Someone's taking that extra $7.24 and shoving it in their pocket, and it's not your pocket. This is the stuff we got to be talking more about. Not robbing from each other. This is a top-down issue. We got to stop being just stuffed into this right, left, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal framing. Start going, someone's robbing us, and it's not my neighbor.
And then also people will say, well, not that large a percentage of workers are at the minimum wage. But here's the answer to that. It may not be, I understand that 40% or 30 or 20, but the point is it's a base. And if you raise the minimum, then people start at a minimum, and people who have been working will then graduate also into a higher wage because they've already been working. They're above the minimum, but people are coming in at a base rate. It helps the entire system is what it does, as you know.
Well, a third of workers in this country make less than $15 an hour. So if you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, a third of the workers would be affected.
Right.
That's reality. And even then, I don't know how you live on $15 an hour, but people somehow figure out how to cobble together an existence.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. 52 million Americans are earning less than 15 an hour, 15 or less.
And
52 million.
This again, I have no idea how you do this.
I don't know how you do it.
And again, we have the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization. We got two guys who are shooting phallic symbols up into space, with a big, phallic waving contest going on, paying virtually no taxes. And yet we've got people who are living on the streets, working in our service industries for poverty wages. And that's the America that we want? No, we're better than this. And
that's the most amazing thing, too, about when I tell people, now I don't know the statistics, so I won't quote how much, but Bezos finally, 2 years ago, I think, Rick, paid something?
Yeah.
Finally.
Well, no, but here's the thing.
And I tell people,
it's all in how we tax them.
$100 million, it doesn't matter.
Yep. It's all because of you. It's all because
you didn't pay.
Former people who were in Congress who wrote the laws. As long as they don't take any income, they don't have to pay any taxes. This is understanding our tax code and how it's skewed to harm working people. As long as they're borrowing money, as long as they're living off their investments, as long as they're not realizing, they're not paying any taxes. And then when they do sell some of their stocks, they pay a much lower rate than the guy swinging a hammer or driving a truck or stringing line in the middle of wintertime. There's something fundamentally wrong with the idea that people who work for a living end up paying higher taxes than people who move money from one pocket to another.
Right. Well, billionaires can tap into their wealth by borrowing against it.
Yep.
And if you borrow, it isn't taxable.
And we've got
That's the bottom line.
We've got a whole industry of smart people who have figured out how to screw over the tax code so that everyone was talking about the estate tax. Even then, if you were smart, nobody ever paid it because they figured out how to use insurance policies and all kinds of other things to get around it. That's why we need to have we need to dig up Dwight David Eisenhower, a good socialist president.
Mm-hmm. Well, Peter Thiel, who's backing Vance in Ohio in the Senate race, he put, I don't know if anybody's aware of this, I'm sure they are, he put together a $5 billion Roth IRA.
Yep.
$5 billion. Preparing for his retirement.
Yeah. And
right.
Look, that all grows interest-free.
Right.
Because that's how the rules are. Since you brought up Vance, what do you think about making wife beating great again?
I think there's the race. People laughed at me a month ago. There is the race. And by the way, the Democratic side, Sherrod Brown, our senator, Democratic senator, has been all over Schumer. The Democrat Senate campaign committee needs to engage in this race for Ryan.
Yeah.
Really does. That is a race that, Ohio has one Republican and one Democrat senator. So, it can happen in Ohio, And then, of course, Vance says that the candidate Republican that Trump backed and won because of Trump, but he suggested, people in violent marriages shouldn't get divorced.
Yeah, making wife beating great again. But then again,
they shift spouses like they. His quote was, "They shift spouses like they changed their underwear, and it's damaged the kids." That's like Marjorie Three Names that made the statement the other day that kids shouldn't have parents that weren't biological.
Yeah, there's the other one.
Keep them in an orphanage. How about that?
Family values, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
These are these folks, and they're not, like I said at the beginning of this, they're not even hiding it anymore.
Right, exactly.
It's coming right out.
True.
Scary stuff. But Bob, as always, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Seriously, I mean, I look at Ohio, and there's a chance to pick up a Senate seat. Maybe the Democrats hold on to Senate, and look, if you can keep the House, pick up a couple of seats in the Senate, maybe then we start doing something. Maybe we can pass the minimum wage and give people something of a better existence, a better opportunity. Maybe we can pass something to save the climate. Maybe we can do something. Maybe we can, I don't know, make lives better. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we can have the opportunity to have the country that we want to have and believe we can have. The future for ourselves and our family that we should have. Not the J.D. Vances of the world. I mean, can you believe that? And I don't want to make light of wife beating or spousal abuse. I don't want to make light of that, because there's nothing fun or funny or interesting or good about nothing. So please, I don't want hate mail on that. But this is the stuff that they're saying out loud. And as I said at the beginning, Ohio, check their laws, is a marital rape state. Perfectly legal. Imagine having someone like J.D. Vance as their senator. That is just downright frightening. Now, I'll tell you, and last bit for today, I would love to see Sherrod Brown throw his hat in the ring to run for president in 2024. That's the kind of Democrat we need running things. I'd love to have seen him be majority leader. Schumer, not so much. Sherrod Brown. There's a guy who understands what working people need and the issues that are important and how to fight and win. That's my guy right there. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours, from Podbean to Stitcher, iTunes, all of those places, they are there. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.